Hello, Kent Philly here, along with Regex Buster. This is the University Rocket Pool Token Delegation Program. It's October 6th, and we are planning to do a pivot on the program from feedback on the community that the current plan was not effective, but we're excited to let Regex Buster, share some thoughts on some current trending topics in the Rocket Pool community that have not come up for vote yet. So without further ado, can I pass it over to you, Regex Buster?
Yeah, so hi. Yeah, there's some great things going on in Rocket Pool right now. Um, Coming up in about 2 to 3 days, I believe it's coming out on Monday. There's going to be actually two new votes. We haven't had a lot of votes recently, but there's going to be two new votes to see how the protocol favors different types of methods for voting. There's two options here. There's a voting standard where we take any node operator who has between 0 and 150% of their staked Ethereum, also staked, like they have their staked RPL, like 10 to or 0 to 150% of the staked ETH as staked RPL as well, along with oh my gosh, for their
Yeah,
node.
the
Um,
collateralization of their node is at least 10%. And the issue is that RPL has gone down in ETH terms in the last 6 months, making some node operators below the 10% threshold, which is the collateral expectation for a node operator. Back to you, Regex Buster.
Yeah, and so we have these two different ideas because essentially in RPIP4 there was an idea of effectively staked or an effective staked RPL, and that was just kind of like the cutoff there for how much you should have to be able to vote, to be able to be a node operator, stuff like that. There's a couple problems with how functions on the functions were set up, and it caused a bit of confusion. So now these votes are to fully enshrine if we want 0 to 150 at the current time enshrine, sorry. If we want 0 to 150% staked RPL to be able to vote, or if we want people to have at least 10% RPL staked to be able to vote. And I know there's a lot of decisions, like there's a lot of arguments for both sides of it. Personally, I like the 0 to 150%. I know there's a lot of small staked operators, so they don't have too much in there. And so sometimes when the market is fluctuating, they can fall beneath without um, noticing it. And so if randomly that voting snapshot goes off and they happen to be under 10%, that's not really their fault. Something in the market moved and they've accidentally shifted under 10%. And I feel like that's not really fair to them to have to be so hyper focused on how the markets are shifting and just be there every single moment of the day, plugging away to make sure it's topped off over 10%. And I think a couple ways we could combat this is either we could make our voting snapshots consistent, kind of like we do with rewards. I believe rewards come out every 28 days. Like
Yep,
the snapshot rewards come every 28 days.
that's correct. Keep going.
Yeah. And so node operators already have that in their brain to, hey, I got to top off before the 28th day because I need to make sure that I get my rewards. But there's not the same kind of thing for voting. And it feels a little disingenuous for people who are in the system. They're node operators. They're trying their best and they can only get that 10%. And it feels a little mean to not be able to include them. There has been some arguments for should we let them just sit underneath 10% and just get away with it? And I know there's been some arguments of like, oh, maybe we should just like as they go underneath 10%, they fall off very like their voting power falls off very hard. And I'm not too sure where I stand on that, but I think it'd be a good idea. Because yeah, you should keep it above 10%, but sometimes you slip and you're at like 9.89 and you get completely cut off because you're just too low. And that's it's not really fair there. So I think there's more to be thought about there, but overall, I think the 0 to 150% is really good. And we got to get these proposals aligned here. else we can't move on with governance. We have to sit here and wait on how we want to make our voting schemes work, or we can't move on, because otherwise that would be really be really weird. You can't finalize on a voting principle, but you're going to vote anyway. That's a little weird. So we need to come together and figure out how we actually like this, and then we can go into the specifics afterwards of, oh, do we need it to decrease after you get like underneath 10% is like a sturdy like fall off, or how we want to do that. I know there's also been some support for 10 to 15% or 10 to 150%. And that's pretty helpful too. I can understand how this is going of they need to have 10% that's the same for rewards. I think the biggest drawback is that people just can't predict when the voting snapshots are going to go off. And so they can't always top off to the 10%, but they still are active in the community and they want to be able to be here and weigh in because they are doing work. They're very beneficial to the protocol. And if they're not allowed to vote because they just keep slipping every so often, it feels like it's a little bit problematic to completely take them out of the vote for whenever that snapshot goes off. And so if we do 10% to 150%, I'd really like to see a more consistent schedule of when we take the voting snapshot, so that low stake node operators have that chance to top off before the snapshot in case something slips somewhere.
It makes a lot of sense. Great feedback. It's probably going to be some more follow-up work in the community to figure out that threshold, the difference between 0 and 150 and 10 and 150. And then, I guess you were saying the difference between 0 and 10%. But personally, I'm in favor of, if you're a node operator, you should get the chance to vote. And just figuring out what that threshold is will be determined by the community. Really helpful thoughts. Regex Buster, I see you posted them publicly here. It's gotten 1 heart. That's awesome. Is there anything else you'd like to share? Trends in the Rocket Pool governance forums or chats that you've seen that's worth talking about?
I don't know. I think what we're doing here is great. And I just encourage anyone who's a node operator to just get out, pick something and vote for it. We have to come to a consensus on this. Even if it's not like 0 to 150 or 10 to 150 isn't how you'd like to perfectly see it. We need to come to a consensus on which way we like it, and then we can do a little bit of tweaking afterwards to fully get it to the standards we want it to be. Otherwise, we can't move on with voting, and that's really dangerous for a protocol like us.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. You don't want to rush things, but we can see that, there hasn't been a proposal in a month, and there's other things that are pushed on. It's good to see there is some testing, but like you said, calling out all Rocket Pool node operators to make sure they're aware on Snapshot. You can join and even get notifications. That's all from us. We'll be pivoting the university token delegation program ahead with the goal of finding product market fit, where the university, and specifically Cincinnati, can get some support for launching their own Rocket Pool node. Ben, where are you guys at with getting a Rocket Pool and ETH node live?
We're getting started on it. We just got our hardware in from the university. They ordered it and got it into us. I don't have a lot of time this weekend to go get it set up. We have a big hackathon actually with we're partnering with the Graph for a big hackathon at UC, which is pretty sweet. So I'm excited for that. But I think next week at the earliest, I should be able to get that machine up and running on a test net, and I think we can secure a little bit of ETH to try staking on some of these places as well.
That's phenomenal. That's really quick. So excited to hear that a testnet Rocket Pool node is going to be set up at the university, and maybe you can get one that's powered by a bicycle one day. We heard that it exists. So thanks so much for everybody that tuned in. Anything else from you, Ben?
I'm all good.
Great. Thanks so much, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.